What's up everyone, I'm CallumOnToast, and recently I asked you guys what you wanted to see in this final week of the season because, I'll be honest, I don't really know what to showcase, but someone mentioned running a full meta team, but running the complete wrong moveset on all three Pokemon. So in today's video, we're in the Catch Cup. These are pretty much the only three meta Pokemon that I've built this season, but they do have quite versatile move options, so I can run a full non-recommended moveset on all three Pokemon and still have decent moves. So we've got Spidops running Counter, X-Scissor, and Grass Knot. I could have even opted for Bug Bite, but you know what, I think Counter, probably slightly better coverage there. Then we've got Altaria, and I'm running Peck, Dragon Pulse, and Dazzling Gleam. And on Claydol, I'm running Confusion, Gyro Ball, and Shadow Ball. Now, I'll be honest, I didn't play particularly well in a lot of these battles. I think subconsciously, I felt a little bit guilty for beating expert trainers that are trying to make that final push for Legend in the Catch Cup. So I managed to throw a bunch of games for pretty much no reason whatsoever. But also, this meta is absolutely diabolical. The amount of people that have built new Wigglytuffs, new Azumarials, Carbinks, Mud Slappers, Shadow Sizzle, etc. is crazy, and I can understand it from the perspective of those expert trainers that are just so desperate to hit Legend, they're going to do literally whatever it takes. But the trainers that have already hit Legend, it's a bit embarrassing. But anyways, with that being said, let's just get into the question of the day. Are you even playing during this final week of the season? And if not, why not? Let me know in the comment section down below. And with that being said, let's get into the battles now. So going into the first battle, leading Spidops into Florges. So this is definitely not a great Pokemon for me to see. Kind of beats the entire team here, and it is fairly common in this meta since, of course, it did have a community day this season, but they go for Chilling Water. Of course, can debuff my attack stat. I'm now going to swap into Altaria, recognizing, of course, they're going to go straight for another Chilling Water, and quite likely that they've got Trailblaze as the other option as well. They swap into their own Spidops, which is quite interesting. Of course, we are debuffed. We go for Dragon Pulse. They actually no shield that, which is really surprising to me. But of course, Rock Tomb gonna get the KO there. I was debuffed, so I don't think I would have been able to go for a full farm down. Of course, Rock Tomb would have debuffed me by a second stage. So now we come back in with our own Spidops, gonna fire off the X-Scissor. X-Scissor gets the KO. They come in with a Shadow Talonflame. So now we come in with our Claydol. The opponent throws immediately, so that gives me a full Confusion in for free. Of course, this is definitely a matchup where Confusion is gonna be much better for me. Mudslap is resisted. Confusions are seriously chunking. Of course, though, Gyro Ball not the best option for me, but great into Fairy type Pokemon. So we go for Gyro Ball once again, grabbing the final shield. I tried to swap out there, not able to do so, but I can outpace them to a Grass Knot. Grass Knot is going to connect, and it actually does a little bit more damage, I believe, than a Rock Tomb. That is huge for me. So Chilling Water, going to debuff my attack stat, but I can fully farm them down here, and the opponent needs to commit to the farm down. Of course, I still had a shield. We get the resisted counter farm down, and I'm able to take that game. Into the next battle, we're going to see a Lapras in the lead. So, of course, Counter is great here. So is Grass Knot. Rock Tomb would have been fine as well. I'm going to no-shield this as they fire off the Sparkling Aria. And now I'm going to look to overfarm and then fire off the Grass Knot. Grass Knot should be enough damage to KO from this range, so it ends up grabbing a shield. At this point, I'm happy to let Spidops go down here. I'm hoping I'll put them into range where I can shield once with my Shadow Claydol and then go for a full Confusion farm down. Of course, going to shield here as they can go for either Sparkling Aria or even potentially an Ice Beam, but I wasn't sure if I would get the full farm down, so instead I actually swap into Altaria and go for the Snipe. Now they come in with a Mandibuzz, which of course we know is going to have a great matchup into Claydol, which implies that whatever they've got in the back is probably quite weak to the Altaria. So I no shield the first move, just going to be a foul play. Of course, this is a matchup where having Dazzling Gleam is quite nice. However, I do still need to land 2 charge moves to get the KO anyway. So at this point, I'm going to fire off the Dragon Pulse here. Dragon Pulse, if it gets shielded, I'm actually going to shield as well. So we end up throwing on CMP here. I'm going to shield this, recognizing Altaria probably quite useful in the end game. And now I'm going to swap, going to go for a CMP tied sack swap, except not really a sack swap because I win CMP and I get the KO there. And their final Pokemon is a Toedscruel. Now this is still winnable for the opponent, but they need to farm up to a Seed Bomb and a Wrap to win this game. The opponent has farmed up a ton of energy, but do they have back-to-back charge moves? Seed Bomb gets the KO, but they don't throw straight away, and as a result, we've got the Dragon Pulse loaded. Dragon Pulse takes out the Toedscruel, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up in there into the next battle. We're going to see Blastoise in the lead. So, this is definitely a matchup where having Grass Knot is going to be quite nice for me. I don't expect the opponent to shield the first charge move. Of course, they're hitting for super effective damage with these rollouts, but honestly not dealing too much damage here as it is non-stab. We can fire off the Grass Knot. Grass Knot gonna connect, and it puts them into counter farm down range. The opponent's going to come in with their own Spider Up, so I'm going to stay in initially, fire off an X-Scissor, hoping to maybe grab a shield here, but the opponent is just going to no-shield that, and now swap into Shadow Altaria, and kind of forced a shield here, and the opponent going to go for the Rock Tomb, debuffing my attack stat, just to hard punish me with a Shadow Alolan Ninetales. So Dazzling Gleam is going to connect. It honestly does decent damage there, but they can fully Powder Snow farm me down. Now, my option here is to come in with the Spider-Ups, hopefully force the opponent to throw, but if not, I've put them into range where one Confusion will certainly KO. So, of course, I'm going to shield this. I feel like Weather Ball might do more damage than a lunge from a Spider-Ups, and now I should just commit to a full Confusion farm down. The opponent, of course, going to go for the lunge there, debuffing my attack stat, and at this point, I thought they were at 1 HP, so I fire off the charge move. Of course, they're going to shield this, and it doesn't KO through the shield because they did have more than 1 HP there. Of course, if I committed to a full Confusion farm down, I could have actually got a tie out of that matchup, but either way, GG's to that trainer. Into the next battle, we're going to see Unova and Stunfisk in the lead. So another matchup where, of course, having Grass Knot is going to be quite nice for me. However, you're going to see it actually not that great for me because Grass Knot doesn't quite put them into counter farm down range before they reach a third charge move. So actually, potentially just going for back-to-back X-Scissors would have been better here, but I'm not going to tank the charge move. I'm not going to use a shield. Instead, I'm going to swap out into my Claydol. Now, they've not seen the fast move yet. They're going to come in with a Gastrodon, which is, I guess, fine with me. They do, unfortunately, outpace me to that first charge move because I'm on Confusion. And they do also bait with a Body Slam. Now, I know this is also just going to be a Body Slam, so I'm going to no-shield this, and then I'm actually going to throw straight away because I expect the opponent possibly to just no-shield this, and then hopefully I can reach another charge move into whatever's in the back, but they've got a Kanto Marowak, so the opponent's running a triple ground team. They try to catch a charge move there. The animation looks really janky for some reason, but anyways, the opponent fires off the rock side. I'm now going to go for Dragon Pulse. I assume with Stab, this does more damage than the Dazzling Gleam. It is going to grab a shield from the opponent, and here the opponent is going to allow me to reach a second Dragon Pulse before they throw the next move. Now, Spider-Ups, I believe, does at least have an X-Scissor loaded. So at this point, I'm happy to just no-shield this. Of course, even Bone Club from this range gets the KO there, but that's fine. We've got the X-Scissor loaded, and with that peck damage, we put them into range where X-Scissor gets the KO, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up in there into the next battle. We're going to see Altaria in the lead. So, of course, not a great matchup for me. Going to be safe swapping into my Claydol here. And, of course, another matchup where having Confusion as the fast move was actually a lot more beneficial for me because they would double resist the Mud Slap damage. They're now going to swap into Gastrodon there after chipping with a Sky Attack. But they will need to throw a charge move. Otherwise, I believe I will reach a Shadow Ball. Nope, never mind. That doesn't happen. Unfortunately, we do not get damage registration error there. So, we just barely miss out, which is very unfortunate because if I landed the Shadow Ball, potentially I put them into full peck farm down range. But at this point, I'm not going to bother shielding here. The opponent is going to swap back into their own Altaria, but we do have Dragon Pulse for coverage, so I'm going straight for it. Dragon Pulse, gonna get the one shot there, and let's see what their final Pokemon is. The opponent is waiting out Switch Shock. They come in with a Shadow Sizzle, so we come in with the Spider-Ups. Certainly going to shield here. We've only got resisted charge moves to throw, but honestly, counters are adding up, dealing pretty much as much damage as the bullet punches from this Shadow Sizzle. So we go for X-Scissor. X-Scissor is going to grab a shield. Of course, if we had lunge there, it would be nice to debuff their attack stat. They fire off the Night Slash, and unfortunately for me, they are just barely going to outpace me to the next charge move. Honestly, here, I should just throw an X-Scissor, but instead, I banked the move, hoping we could outpace on Altaria, but once again, they outpaced me just by a single turn. And now at this point, we need to counter farm them down. We're not able to do so, and unfortunately, I do lose that game. But GG's opponent into the next battle. We're going to see a Zweilous in the lead. Potentially in that final battle, or sorry, in that previous battle there, I think what I could have done is gone for an X-Scissor, gone for an undercharge, and then came in and got the perfect farm down with the Altaria. I think that was my only win condition. But anyways, into this battle here. Great lead for us. X-Scissor gets the KO. They're going to come in with a Shadow Sizzle. I felt like I was getting to X-Scissor, but I don't get there. And that is, of course, because counter doesn't generate energy as fast as it used to, and certainly not as fast as Shadow Claw. for. So it just felt like I was going to get to it, and I didn't. And as a result, they fully farmed me down. Certainly not ideal for me, but we get the full peck farm down. And their final Pokemon is going to be Azumarill, a Pokemon that we are certainly going to struggle against. But we go for Dazzling Gleam. We grab a shield there. I'm now going to come in with that Shadow Claydol. This is their final Pokemon. So at this point, definitely going to shield this, as the opponent is going to go for an Ice Beam. I should tank that, but honestly, that would put me into farm down range, which is certainly not ideal for me. So yeah, we go for Gyro Ball. We grab the final shield. They actually allow me to reach another charge move, and I make a huge mistake. Should have just full sent a Shadow Ball there. As you can see, if we connected with a Shadow Ball, I believe does like 20 more damage in terms of just the base stats of the charge move, and as a result, we probably put them into farm down range. But unfortunately, Ice Beam gets the KO there, and we end up losing that game. So another game there where I probably should have won that, but ended up winning that. But anyways, into next battle, another Shadow Sizzle here. We're just going to stay in with the Spidops, as the opponent is going to fire off the Night Slash. I think I'm going to go for an X-Scissor and then might swap into Altaria, or I might just allow them to fully farm me down. No, we're going to swap into Altaria because now we can no-shield this and then go for a full peck farm down. Night Slash is going to do quite a lot of damage there, Shadow on Shadow. You can see as well, the IVs on my Shadow Altaria aren't really the best, but they come back in with their Stunfisk, and we can actually reach back-to-back Dragon Pulses before they farm me down. So the first one does decent damage there, and we do reach a second one. Dragon Pulse number 2 gets the KO there. Their final Pokemon is going to be a Fearow, and at this point I feel like I probably should be able to fully Confusion farm them down before they reach 3 charge attacks, so that's what we're going to go for here. And if we do get to back-to-back Gyro Balls, maybe I will end up throwing, but you can see these Confusions absolutely shredding through their HP. So at this point, just going to shield. Of course, Confusion will be taking out that Fearow, and I'm able to take that game. Into next battle, we're going to see a Shadow Primeape in the lead. So, of course, not a bad matchup for me by any means. The opponent is going to fire off a Rage Fist, and then I'm actually going to swap out of this matchup. I'm hoping 2 Confusions can get the farm down, but not really. So, at this point, they are boosted. I can tank this, but I don't know what they've got in the back, so I'm going to shield. And now they come in with a Gastrodon. So, at this point, going to full send a Shadow Ball here. Shadow Ball is going to connect. It does decent damage there, and it will force them to throw. They have to full send a Water Pulse as well, and the opponent does exactly that. But now we can come in with the Altaria. They will be reaching a Body Slam, but that's fine with me. Happy to no-shield this and then commit to the full peck farm down. So we get the farm down there. The opponent is going to wait out their switch clock, and the opponent is going to come back in with a Steelix, which is definitely not ideal for me as I'm not running Flamethrower. However, Spidops is not going to be completely walled as we've got Counter and we've got Grass Knot. So honestly, I'm thinking, you know what? They're probably not going to shield this as we go for Grass Knot, but they actually do end up shielding there. So I'm going to no-shield this. They go for a Breaking Swipe. The opponent has got me very low, and unfortunately, they can make a catch onto Primeape. Not really a catch because I had to just throw here, otherwise they farm me down. But either way, good play by the opponent there, and at this point, they outpace me to the next move. I kind of have to no-shield this. It's a Breaking Swipe. It's going to debuff my attack stat, and you can see with that debuff, I'm never going to be able to peck farm them down there. So unfortunately, even if I did shield, they would just reach another charge move anyways, and so unfortunately, I do lose that game. But GG to opponent there into the next battle, yet another Shadow Sizzle. We're going to stay in here, and they are going to throw on CMP as we reach an X-Scissor. They go for Trailblaze, which is kind of strange, but either way, don't really care. Gonna fire off the X-Scissor. X-Scissor is going to grab a shield. At this point, I'm happy to let them fully farm me down. We can come in with the Altaria. I feel like they're quite likely to have an Azumarill in the back, so I'm not going to bother shielding here. I'm going to go for that peck farm down, and the opponent's actually going to come in with a Furret instead. So, not the Azu I was expecting, but we can go for Dragon Pulse. Dragon Pulse, big damage. We can now come in with the Claydol, and the opponent swaps out straight away into Talonflame, probably expecting me to be on Mud Slap, but we're not. We're on Confusion. This isn't that bad of a matchup for me, but I'm going to go for Gyro Ball here. Gyro Ball, of course, is going to be resisted. Doesn't really matter. Actually, probably better for me as we get the Confusion farm down. They come back in with the Furret here, and of course, I'm going to be shielding. They fire off a Swift. We go for one more Confusion. We snipe with the peck damage from the Altaria, and I'm able to take that game. Alright, so go into the next battle. We're going to see a Dusknoir in the lead. Honestly, I do not have a great response to this at all. We've got a Pokemon, of course, where normally we'd be running Shadow Claw. We'd be hitting for super effective damage, but I'm hitting for double resisted non-stab damage with those counters. I swap into my only, like, semi-decent response here in Altaria, so I am kind of forced to shield here. Now the opponent's going to swap into a Florges. So at this point, going to full send a Dazzling Gleam, of course. Dazzling Gleam is going to grab a shield by the opponent, as of course, very likely that they just go for a Chilling Water. However, they won't be able to fully farm me down, at least not before I reach a second Dazzling Gleam. And these pecks, honestly, they're adding up here. So Dazzling Gleam is going to deal decent damage. I then swap back into Spidops, honestly hoping to bait out the Dusknoir again, but the opponent is actually not going to bother swapping out there. So unfortunate for me, I'm going to have to go and send an X-Scissor. X-Scissor gets the KO, but they come in with a Peck Shadow Talonflame. So that's very interesting. Of course, still not a great position for me to be in, but we're going to come in with that Shadow Claydol, and the opponent will outpace the first charge move. I have to shield this, otherwise they just fully Astonish farm me down. They come back in with the Dusknoir, and I'm going straight for Gyro Ball here. Gyro Ball is actually going to be no shielded. I don't really understand that play whatsoever, but now I'm going to swap into Altaria. The opponent has to throw there. They don't end up throwing, and as a result, we get the Peg farm down, and I'm able to take that game. But into the next battle, we're going to see a Shadow Altaria in the lead. So we are going to swap into our Claydol. The opponent is going to throw here, not on the best timing, but that's fine with me. They go for a Sky Attack. Now they're going to come in with a Corviknight. So I'm going to go straight for Shadow Ball here. And if the opponent continues to overfarm, I can actually reach a second Shadow Ball before they throw the charge move. So Shadow Ball number 2, not respected once again, and it actually gets the KO there. They come back in with the Altaria, which doesn't really help me. It's still very awkward for me to be in. So we're going to come in with the Spidops. I'm going to shield this as they go for a Sky Attack. And then they swap into their final Pokemon, a Shadow Tentacruel. However, they're not on Acid. They're not on Poison Sting. I believe they are on Poison Jab here. So with that Acid Spray, they are now dealing quite a lot of damage. So I'm going to go for a Dragon Pulse. It gets shielded, and because I don't have access to Sky Attack, we actually don't reach a second charge move. And at this point, if they full send a Scald here, it's going to be game over. Yep, they go for Scald. They also get the debuff to my attack stat, which is very unfortunate. It probably doesn't make a difference here. I'm just going to no-shield this. I can't win this game. And unfortunately, we get Dragon Breath farm down, and we do lose. But GG's to that trainer. Into the next battle, we're going to see a Charger Bug in the lead. So they're on Volt Switch as the fast move. I'm going to swap out, trying to catch an X-Scissor onto my Altaria, and I'm able to do exactly that. Now, Claydol has a bit of an awkward matchup into the Charger Bug, obviously taking super effective damage from the X's, but double resisting the Volt Switch damage. So they come in with a Azumarill, and they actually allow me to reach back-to-back Dazzling Gleams as they throw on CMP. So Dazzling Gleam is going to connect. It does get them fairly low there. They did overfarm just slightly. I don't know if I can get the KO with 3 Confusions. Quite unlikely, actually. So instead, going to come back in with the Spidops. Going to go for 6 counters, throwing X-Scissor on CMP, winning CMP, getting the KO there with that resisted charge move. And I can definitely tank this move here onto my Spidops. So I'm going to go for 1 counter, then swapping into Shadow Claydol. And the opponent's going to come in with a Togekiss. But this is actually a great matchup for me, assuming they don't have Dazzling Gleam, because Shock and Aura Sphere are both resisted charge moves. We've also got access to Gyro Ball. Rock Tomb would be better here just because I could debuff their attack stat, but either way, doesn't really matter. Still a very comfortable matchup for me, so gonna shield this up here as they go for the next Aura Sphere. I'm then gonna look to swap back into Spidops, looking to catch an Aura Sphere, hopefully. The opponent does go for Aura Sphere. They swap back into Charger Bug, but now we can go for the X-Scissor. X-Scissor, gonna grab the final shield. We've got Shadow Ball. We do lose CMP, but Shadow Ball should get the KO, and if not, put them into like 1 HP range. So Shadow Ball is going to connect now. Shadow Ball doesn't KO there, but we do get the farm down. And likewise, we can Confusion, farm down that Togekiss, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on there, into the next battle, we can see a Wigglytuff in the lead. So, not really ideal for me. I'm just going to stay in, play this out here. The opponent is going to fire off a charge move. They do have energy for an Icy Wind, but they actually go for a Swift there, which is fine with me. They don't debuff my attack stat. I can fire off the Grass Knot. Grass Knot does respectable damage, and it will force them to throw their next charge move. The opponent goes for Swift. Swift gets the KO there, but that's fine with me. We can come in with the Altaria, get that Peck Snipe, but they come in with a Carbink, so I'm swapping into Claydol, and their final Pokemon is going to be a Gastrodon. So running Wigglytuff, Carbink, and Gastrodon as a Legend Trainer in the Catch Cup is kind of mental. But anyways, at this point, there's nothing I can do here. So I think I'm just going to allow the Body Slam to go through, go for a Shadow Ball. I need this to be no shielded here, but they are very likely just going to shield. And as a result, I'm just going to concede the match. But going into the final battle, leading into Arctibax, this is actually one of the first battles I did. So I was leading with Claydol, then I realized I was double weak to Ice, so I actually swap out into my Spidops. But having Counter and Grass Knot as a safe swap on the Spidops is quite ideal for me in this situation, because now we can full send a Grass Knot. I don't expect a shield, and as a result, Grass Knot gets the KO. They come back in with the Arctibax, and now I can go for an Exeter. Now, the reason I did eventually swap to having Spidops in the lead is because when I was safe swapping Spidops and I was being met with a Corviknight, there was just literally nothing I could do. They could overfarm massively, and I just couldn't win that. But either way, GG's to that final trainer. So that's going to be it for today's video. If you did enjoy it, please make sure you leave a like, leave a comment letting me know, and as well, don't forget to respond to the question of the day if you haven't done so already. And if you want to see more content like this in the future, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on post notifications. That way you'll be notified whenever I upload a new video. Now, if you want to take your support to the next level, you can become a channel member with perks including early access to new videos, shoutouts at the end of each video, custom loyalty badges, and custom emojis to use in the comments of every video. I want to say a massive thank you to everyone that has become a channel member already. Your support is greatly appreciated. And with that being said, thank you so much for watching today's video, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.